Hello, folks, and welcome to the Know Better, Be Better podcast, a conversation about health and wellness, where we explore various topics to increase our knowledge and understanding in order to grow holistically. I'm Daron Raynor.
And I'm Dani Ondreka, and we're here today talking about motivation, especially as it pertains to areas of fitness and wellness.
So speaking of motivation, I do have a story that kind of pertains to that specific topic that we're looking at.
Absolutely.
All right, so and it more so looks at the word why. So not just the overall motivational aspect, but the specific of why. And that's what we're going to look at today. So the story comes from Dashrath Manji. Many people have probably heard about it. He was born into the lowest rung of India's caste system in Galwar village in India. And he ended up working in coal mines. When he was an adult, his wife was injured and died because the nearest doctor was, get this, in a town 34 miles away.
Wow.
Because of his experience, though, he decided that he was going to make a new roadway through a ridge of hills in order to make his village more accessible. He ended up carving a 110-meter length path, completing it in about 22 years. And this was between 1960 and 1982, using only a hammer and a chisel. Talk about determination. Ultimately, Manji's road reduced the distance between the start and finish areas from 34 miles to 9.3 miles.
Can you imagine doing something like that for 22 years?
Yeah.
Being that motivated by a specific experience that you never quit for 22 years.
Yeah.
That's a significant distance.
And to benefit a whole people. He benefited his entire village as a result of it because of, unfortunately, the passing of his wife. It was the why factor that pushed him and motivated him to continue, despite the fact that people probably called him a lunatic, I believe is what he quoted. But he was determined that nobody else would have to experience what he had to experience.
Wow.
So talk about determination and motivation, yeah.
So many of us probably don't have that same kind of experience to relate to, but certainly an incredible story. I actually have something I'd love to share about an old client of mine. So I have a background in exercise oncology, and a former patient of mine, actually one of my longest running patients during the time that I was with this organization, did not want to come and meet with me. Her husband made her come in to meet with me initially because she was having troubles walking. She had gone through chemotherapy twice. She was very, very weak, really heavily relied on her walker to get around. And her husband walked her up to my office, quite literally made her walk up to my desk and sit down. And we had a conversation. And one of the first questions I always ask whenever I would see a new patient was, why are you here? And so generally we get the physical stuff. You know, I'm going through such and such treatment. This is what I'm struggling with. But what I'm really looking for is past the physical. We want to look further than that. What is the actual why of why you are here? Why do you need this? So she initially started painting me this picture of her cancer journey and all the struggles that she was having in the physical sense. But what kept coming up throughout it was her family. And her story was so interwoven with them, that the experiences that they were having, the things she was struggling with, participating in with her family members, which was incredibly sad to me. So we really started to see, okay, this is your why. You want to be able to have these experiences with your family, and you're struggling to be there and be present and be strong enough to hang out, you know, for more than a few minutes at a time, especially at those big family functions. Yeah. So I ended up working with her for about a year when she came to me with this story that I just thought was the most incredible. Her granddaughter was graduating from Wright State, and she had been so worried about coming into this arena, about having it be not very accessible. And she was able to climb every single stair in that arena unassisted, because she showed up to work with me every single week, did not miss a session. I would give her things to work on throughout the rest of the week, and she was so committed. But she had that goal. She had that goal in her mind that she was going to show up to that graduation for her family and be able to participate. And not only did she do that, she went further. She climbed every stair. I mean, no one told her to do that.
Right, yeah.
But she did it on her own, which is just so incredible. So I think there's a lot to be said for having that particular goal, that particular why, and it meant a lot to her, which is why she was able to be so successful.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you brought that up specifically with her doing what no one else asked her to do. And then also when I look at our guy from India, him doing something that really no one else asked him to do, but going above and beyond, which is the both aspects that come together. So when I'm thinking of that why factor, there's two types of whys that we're looking at, especially with motivation. There's that intrinsic and there's that extrinsic factor. But it seems like they both had this thing that was intrinsic about them. Because with the extrinsic factor, okay, I have something that's outside of me. I have a goal. Boom, I hit the goal. We're done. But with the intrinsic factor, it seems like we have a little bit of, okay, we have goals, we hit the goal, but I want more. I keep chasing that same feeling. I keep going, I keep going, I keep going. So in this guy's case, it was like hammer chisel all the way through to all the way through a ridge into another town. For this lady, instead of just walking up to her row, sit down, walk down, that's a big victory. She's like, let me walk every single step of the rice. Is it the Nutter Center?
Yeah, that's correct.
And if people know the Nutter Center, it's not some slouch. It's not just
it's
a
not
pair
a
of
small
bleachers.
building.
You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
But I think that's the thing about the why is we make it complicated, but yet it's so simple. And really it starts with looking at our life being very introspective or even retrospective, looking over history and things of that sort. And then trying to ask the question of like, out of this, what matters to you most, you know?
Absolutely.
And then we got to back it up with some routine, right? I mean, because, go ahead.
100%. I mean, motivation will not always be around. And it's great to say I'm motivated by this specific thing, but you're going to have days where you wake up and you're honestly just like, today I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm tired. Maybe you've had a rough week with your kids. Maybe you haven't been sleeping well. Maybe you haven't eaten the right things. So you feel like, oh, I don't want to show up for myself and exercise today or work towards this goal today. It's just too much.
Yeah.
So that's when you need to rely on that routine. It's the things that you do every single day, because then it's not a question.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, am I going to go do it today? It's, well, I already do it every day.
Right, exactly. It seems very cyclical. Like one aspect works and fuels the other. So the motivational side, when the days are good, we show up for ourselves, we get the job done, we handle our business, boom, we're good. Now that motivates us to handle the next day. But what happens is when we are going into the days where it's like, okay, this is really hard for me today. I don't feel like showing up for myself. I don't feel like carrying out my business. I don't feel like doing what I said I was going to do. Doing that little bit of saying, okay, I'm going to give myself, even if it's just the bare minimum, especially when it comes to exercise, I'm going to show up and I'm going to put in just a few minutes here instead of my usual maybe 45 minutes or an hour. What that does is that helps to strengthen the foundation that we have that motivates us to keep going and keep going. So that way, on the hard days, we can show up and we can do it even if it's just out of routine. It's not necessarily that we're mentally there, but then on the good days, we appreciate it more. And then it kind of goes cyclical and it makes us more and more grounded in our intrinsic or extrinsic motivational factors, you know?
Absolutely. I think if you think about going to work every single day, it's not really a question. You're going to get up and you're going to go to work and you see a payoff from that. You get a paycheck. Hopefully, if you're going to work and you're working hard, you're improving at whatever job you're performing. But the exact same thing can be said for, exercise and some of these other wellness topics that we discuss. If you are putting in that work and you're showing up every day and it's not a question for you, you also will see a payoff there.
Definitely. And I think you highlighted something about that payoff, which is a form of extrinsic motivation. So it's kind of important that we take a look at both of them. What is extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation? How do we use that for our benefit in order to build this why? Again, coming back to it. So extrinsic motivation here is the motivation or the why to perform a behavior or engage in an activity because one wants to earn a reward or avoid a punishment.
Oof.
This can be external. So many people will approach this routine with this routine in the forefront. I only exercise because I want things like weight loss, or I want to complete a competition like running a marathon or things like that. And there's nothing wrong with it, but the feeling is attached to the reward. That's what we're getting with the extrinsic motivation. So wherever the reward is or whatever the punishment is that I'm trying to avoid, I put my feeling or my stock in that. So it's external, it's outside of me.
Like trying to attain a certain physique.
Exactly. And what we find with that is, while that's very good, especially for a starting point, there are some risk factors to it. So a drawback when we consider the why is that the activity can appear as work instead of play, which is why many hit that wall in their routine because it turns into like, okay, let me just get this routine done. Let me just go ahead and do this thing. Let me just get it done. And then eventually it's like, you don't really find the joy that you should find in the activity. It's external. So once you hit it, then sure, the endorphins are up, you're feeling good, you're happy, and all these types of things. But the process, that's what we're talking about. The process itself can almost feel more like work when exercise should be play. Exercise is fun. It's recess, is what I say. It's recess for kids, teenagers, adults, old people. This is recess. And recess is always fun, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I agree. It should be fun. We shouldn't just take the enjoyment out of our everyday. I also think if we're working to attain something like a specific physique, if you don't attain that goal, maybe it's outside of your reach. Maybe you have a totally different body type than the one you're working towards. Maybe you looked at something on Instagram and you thought, wow, I could become her. When in reality, it's just not the case. If you don't reach that very specific goal, you're just going to consider that journey to be a failure. And there may be so many good things you could take from that journey. And you don't want to look at it as something that's been wasted.
Yeah, and you touch on a really important topic there, which is something that we both see in the world of exercise,
Absolutely.
Especially in fitness and social media, is these, I don't want to call them but pretty much we could say almost unattainable type physiques or types of quote unquote fit people that the average Joe sees. And then people want to say, okay, I want to look like that, or I want to be like that, when our body is just not meant to look that way. Our genetics don't favor one who is just gifted like that or has this type of, kind of condition, you know, that has been set for them based on how their parents were or whatever sport they played and things like that. But we look at these types of people who are idols in a way, and we decide, oh, this is what I want to be, but we don't understand that our genetics is going to cause us to fall short. Or no matter how hard we work, we're not supposed to look like them. We're supposed to look like our best us. And that's where the issue lies. Is many times we're saying, okay, I want to be the next Arnold, or I want to be the next, I don't know, who's a big person that you know in the industry.
Oh gosh, I try not to stare at too many people because I just get discouraged.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we're too focused on trying to be the next person. We put our reward in looking like or being like them. We buy into all these gimmicks, or we try and live out a life that is doing what they do to the T, but that's not the life that's mapped out for us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I love that you said becoming our best version of ourselves. I think that's so important, because if you're constantly chasing something that's not you, I mean, what is your sense of identity going to look like? And I mean, we open up a whole other can of worms when we're looking at it that way. But I do hear a lot from clients. They come to me and they want to have abs, you know, like that's their big goal. And I always want to say, okay, can we have a non-appearance-based goal? Can we have maybe a strength goal or a flexibility goal? Can we work towards something that's really tangible that you can feel accomplished when you do reach that goal? And one, I mean, core muscles look different for every single person when they are defined. And two, just because you can see someone's abs does not mean they're healthy. And my goal for someone is to make sure that they're okay, first and foremost. So for some people, I just have to say, okay, you know what? I might not be the trainer for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And that's where there's a deeper, people have to understand there's a deeper meaning behind that. It's not just, oh, I don't want to work with you, or, oh, you're not worth the time. It's literally, hey, I want you to think bigger. There's so much more that you can achieve. There's so much more that you can accomplish than putting all of your stock and all of your reward and good feeling into this one thing. Good abs, low body fat, or whatever that may be, instead of, oh, I want to feel good. I want to be well. These types of things, actually, they fuel us into getting into these types of other tangible topics, you know, like, oh yeah, I want to look chiseled or whatever. A lot of those things are just byproducts of the feeling well factor. And that's where we want to be. We want to feel good. We want to move well, and we want to be well. So how do we look at that from an intrinsic point of view? Absolutely.
So looking more at that intrinsic motivation, it's engaging in that behavior because we want to do it. It's rewarding. You know, doing the activity in itself is the actual reward. We want to find enjoyment, right? Yeah. So like you were saying, we don't want to lose the joy in that every day, even though it may be something that has become routine. We want to find that joy and that enjoyment in it. I think a big part of that is finding things that we like to do. If you're not a person who likes to go out and run, maybe you shouldn't go out and run.
Right, yeah.
Don't destroy, a particular activity for yourself. Don't continue to beat it over the head because you think you're somehow going to like it if you do it, 20, 30, 40 times. It may just give you a really negative projection when you look at exercise as a whole.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. Maybe you'd rather go find a Zumba class. Maybe you just really like to walk. Maybe you like hiking. That's amazing. You should pour your energy into looking for those things that you enjoy so that you are enjoying the activity. And it's not about just getting there to that end goal. It's about enjoying the time that you spend on the journey. And that's where our longevity is found. When we're looking at our why, we're going to be able to sustain that so much longer because we like doing it.
Yes.
You tend to quit things you don't enjoy doing. I'm sure you can agree.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but yes.
Absolutely.
What's interesting about that is going back to that recess picture is when you remember going outside for recess, every kid was happy, right? Why? Because they were doing their own thing. So some kids ran over here and said, we're going to play kickball or dodgeball. Some kids ran over here and said, we're going to the swings. Some were going to go down the slide. Some digging in the sandbox. Some going to go for a race or play tag. The vastness of activity that was out there that people had to choose from, that kids had to choose from, and they found joy in it. You couldn't grab a kid off of the swings and say, hey, we're going to play kickball, and they were going to just automatically love it. Some of them did not find much joy in that, which was kind of hard because if you look at gym classes where it's a little more structured and regimented and everyone has to like run the mile, let's say, you'll find some who are like, yeah, I'm excited to run the mile. And some are like, I'm just walking this thing.
That was me.
Because there's no joy in that. You know what I mean? That they didn't find joy in the activity. So it actually stunts some people's exercise growth, quote unquote, if you may. When they get into adulthood and they're told to take care of their bodies and stuff, they have negative connections to exercise because they were put into activities that they did not enjoy. But if they were put into like more loose things, and I speak of the recess bit, Zumba class or swim lessons or swimming or water aerobics or even weightlifting, whatever that may be, they found joy in that specific activity. And they're like, this is my why. This is why I get up, because I feel good. I feel like when I come in, I feel a part when I'm doing it. It's challenging sometimes, but I'm all in. I love it. And then when I leave, I'm like, man, that was a good one today. And then I'm ready for the next one. I can't wait to get to the next one, versus like, oh, glad that's over. You know what I mean? So there is that, there is a difference there. But one thing I wanted to kind of look at is steps in kind of building and maintaining that motivation. And we looked at the two intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. The way that I feel like we could pair it is in 3 steps. So step 1 is extrinsic, especially if you're a beginner. Let's speak from a beginner's standpoint. There's extrinsic. Then 2, we can look at the intrinsic. And then 3, we can amplify the intrinsic through external environment. Okay. So when we look at extrinsic motivation, especially for beginners and how we're going to build and maintain our motivation, if exercise is new to you, setting up a routine with a reward system or a goal can help kickstart that routine. Things like improving physique or losing weight or body fat, things where the goal is outside of us, where the reward is attached to the goal, just so that we can say, okay, I'm going to get in and get a routine. Now, it doesn't have to be physical physique goals. I think you mentioned it before, like, I want to be able to walk up some steps. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or I want to be able to get in and out of a chair without the help of an aid or without my son having to help me up and out of things.
I want to be able to pick up my child,
exactly,
at the store when they're trying to run away from me.
Right. So when people do those things, when they complete those tasks, the radiance that comes off of them, the light that shows in them is just excitement. It's like, wow, I really achieved something. But it's not so much like, some people it could be, I've lost 25, 35 pounds. But other people it can be, I finally was able to pick this thing up, or I was finally able to get from point A to point B without assistance or with little assistance, whatever the case may be. So sometimes when we're starting a routine, especially with exercise, especially with New Year's resolution,
yes,
there has to be sometimes a little bit of the extrinsic motivation. And that's okay. That is very much okay. We're not saying intrinsic is better than extrinsic, but we're trying to draw this picture. Okay? There's
more. There's absolutely more to it.
So then intrinsic motivation, there's this is where like self-reflection comes into place. So I would recommend, especially to people, when we exercise, when we're in the middle of trying to achieve that extrinsic motivational factor, or that reward that is that light at the end of the tunnel, or that reward that is outside of us, it's important to take notes of self. This is where self-reflection comes in. So observe and note. You can fill in things like, I feel blank when I blank. So I feel good when I exercise, or I feel good when I swim, or whatever the case may be. That starts to kind of get us into a positive mindset where the reward is no longer attached outside of us. It starts to reward ourselves personally. So it stays within, you know?
Yes, I feel more energetic when I drink more water.
Yeah, exactly. And those small things they snowball. It becomes bigger and bigger and bigger in our lives. And then eventually it's like, well, I don't really worry about I almost forgot about the extrinsic motivation. I just do this because I love it. And that's the point of it all, you know?
I think we sometimes don't even realize how good we can feel until all of a sudden you start to compile these good habits. They start to stack on top of each other. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I do feel really good. I didn't even know that I could feel like this. And that's such an amazing thing.
Absolutely. And it's okay to feel good after the exercise. It's not like sometimes, or it's okay to say, yeah, I'm glad I got that done. Because sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I love exercise and I leave there very often saying, whew, I'm glad that's over. But
you never regret it.
I don't regret it, exactly.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody ever regrets like, wow, I drank enough water today. That was really terrible. I wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Or I went to the gym today. I wish I hadn't gone.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing is many times we look at those types of healthy decisions and healthy habits, and even if they may not have been the most favorable thing right off the jump, we can always look back and say, I'm glad I did that. I knew I felt great when I did that, you know? Then the intrinsic comes in and we start to build on that extrinsic motivation to where I don't want to say the extrinsic motivation becomes secondary, but it just becomes a byproduct. It's like what we had as a goal, it's still going to be achieved. It's still going to happen. My focus is not there so much. I'm not going to be, once I hit it, I stop. It's the longevity of it, you know?
Well, if you're addicted to the journey doesn't stop, which I think is a really beautiful thing. And I don't know if you see this in your personal life. I definitely see it in mine, that when I am very, very focused on those things like strength and just feeling well and taking care of myself, that other stuff really does just kind of fall into place, which is incredible.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, I kind of do look a little stronger. Isn't that nice?
Yeah. That's the thing is like, it's like stepping away from a mirror. You know, you see day one in the mirror, but instead of coming back every day just to check the progress, you maybe in passing walk by a mirror, a month and a half later, and you're like, oh, wow, I finally see definition. The amount of clients that I have worked with as a personal trainer that were, I helped shift their focus to like, let's just get you to move better. That's what we're going to do. Let's just move better and feel better.
What a great goal.
Versus become, drop down significant weight and do all these short-term goals, And when I meet with them, random day, it's not even like we're doing a check-in or anything like that. It'll be 5-6 weeks into our program and we're just, I'm ready for, I can think of one client. I'm ready for her to come in. And she comes in and she's got a big smile on her face. I'm like, hey, how you doing? She's like, I saw my tricep today. Like, we celebrate that. You know what I mean? It's like, while her goal was, dropping body fat and definition and stuff like that, her shift of focus came on just feeling good and being in a good mental state, especially with exercise and being able to connect the two, that when she kind of revisited that extrinsic goal, she's like, oh, wow, I'm a lot closer than I thought it was. Matter of fact, I probably even passed it up, And that is the reward that I'm seeing. And she's like, I want to keep going. She didn't stop. She's going and going and going and going. As you said, you attach your reward to the journey. The journey itself is the rewarding part. It's not necessarily the end, because the end, once you hit the end, then you got to start a new goal and a new goal and a new goal versus just, let's just flow with it all, I
almost call those like little light bulb moments.
Yeah.
Because I see the same thing with people too, and I do it with myself. You just notice something all of a sudden, like maybe you pick something up in your garage and it's a lot easier than you remember it being.
Exactly.
You're like, wow, That's really fun.
No, those things.
My back doesn't hurt.
Yeah, those are, I can't even describe. It's one of those, like, you have to feel it to be able to describe it, because that feeling is so much, to me, it's so much greater than just achieving the like external reality of things.
Well, you could talk at somebody until you're blue in the face and say, this is good for you, you're going to feel so great. But until they actually experience it, they have no reason to believe you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, especially being trainers, being exercise physiologists, and, you know, we have a certain level of athleticism, I guess you would say, because it's a joy of ours. You know, we have personal goals for ourselves, and we love to do it. So looking at us saying, okay, well, you're young, you're fit, you're in shape, why should I listen to you? You know, they have to experience it for themselves, because just looking at us, it's not as believable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. So when we look at the third factor, we looked at the extrinsic first. It's kind of like the getting the foot in the door aspect, a quick why, not necessarily a quick why that's like, okay, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in X amount of time, but just, this is what gets my foot in the door of exercise, whether it be, you know, I want to be able to make a proper serve in tennis. It doesn't have to be just the door of the weight room.
Something brought you here.
Exactly.
To make a change.
Exactly. And then we try to make mental notes of ourselves to make it an intrinsic thing. So that we find reward, not in the goal of what we want to accomplish, but we find reward in the activity and in the journey, as you said. Then there's this third part. Now we got to amplify it, because unfortunately, candles don't just shine all the time. They have to be, you know, you have to give them more fuel, and you have to keep it burning, keep it burning, keep it burning. So how do we amplify this intrinsic motivation through environment? Like, how do we make the intrinsic stay strong or become stronger through a conducive environment?
How do we stay motivated?
There we go.
Essentially. Yeah. I mean, once you're in it, it can become hard, right? We talked about it. You can get tired. Things can happen. Maybe you get busy. Maybe you have, you know, a family emergency, something happens, you have to travel somewhere, and you come back home and you're out of your routine and you're like, oh my gosh, well, starting over again just feels so hard. When in reality, you're not really starting over. And I think it's having these little catches in place where you can say, okay, I have a person that I go to the gym with who's a friend, and they're going to encourage me to come back and to get back into my routine on the days that I'm not feeling it. Maybe you have a particular instructor at a class that you take often, and you know that person is going to notice if you don't show up. I know at the gym that I work at, where I teach, we really, really pride ourselves on looking at who is in the room and noticing who's not there. If someone's been coming for a while, and we like to check in on them. So if you become friends with maybe someone who teaches exercise or goes to a class with you, let them know, hey, like, maybe I'm feeling kind of down. Maybe I'm not as motivated. Can you help encourage me this week to show up and to do these things for myself? And it's okay to be open with them, because they have days too. We all don't want to show up. And I think they're much more likely to help you with that, especially if you are open with them.
Yeah, 100%. It really does come down to the community, I guess you would say. And when you understand that why element, or the reason that you are where you are, the reason why you are attempting what you're attempting and why you find joy in it, you have to find like-minded individuals. So finding, like you said, finding a class and an instructor with the same why factor helps keep you in for longer. Finding a gym or a facility or a club that has that same why factor of maybe community or whatever your health goal is, or whatever your reasoning may be of trying to be better overall holistically, that's going to be more conducive than maybe just joining, I'll just throw it out, like a hardcore gym that is, that's very much outside of what you are meant to do. You're not going to find a person whose favorite thing is Zumba showing up to maybe a powerlifting gym. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense.
You won't find me there either.
No, probably not me. I don't powerlift at all either. So you want to make an environment that is going to help support and drive you forward in that journey. And in return, you're going to want to do that for others as well. What we wind up doing is we go from just a why factor of like, how can I fulfill myself, to how can I take that and fulfill others, right?
Yes.
So didn't you have a client that you worked with who was in that same boat, who found their why, and then in turn decided to help people in their why, to help their light shine as well?
Absolutely. When I was still working in the field of exercise oncology, I did have a client who was working in a completely different field. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer fairly young. She does have daughters who are in college, but still, fairly young mother. And she went through all this treatment, came and worked with us to get stronger, and really realized that she had a massive heart for people who were diagnosed with cancer, who maybe didn't have a large support system, who needed people to just be there for them. Maybe they didn't have someone to come with them to sit for 6 hours and receive a chemo infusion. That's hard. And she would start sitting with them. She made friends with some of the nurses and some of the folks in the facility. She actually joined another organization who does help to provide those kind of peer-based services to others who are going through treatment. And she just started showing up, and it actually turned into a job for her, which I think is just absolutely incredible. So now she's there full time, and she is able to rely on her own experience and share that with others. And it really encourages them, but it also really fills her cup. And that's a beautiful thing to see.
What a blessing that is when you think about it, like kind of like just backtracking over the whole aspect of why. And it starts with that self-reflection, coming to terms with who you are, where you maybe want to be, and then saying, okay, how am I going to motivate myself to get up and do something? You know what I mean? What is my reward going to be attached to? Just as like with a little kid, it's like, oh, if you do this, then I'll give you your allowance money. The reward is attached to it. So what is my allowance money when it comes to exercise and wellness? What am I going to do for myself that is not just going to benefit me and feel good at the end, but also motivate me and spur me on to do it? So it's not necessarily like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the gym and then afterwards I get to have a triple cheeseburger. You know what I mean? It's like I go to the gym, but then afterwards, maybe I get to have my favorite healthy shake. You know what I mean? Some people attach those little tiny day-to-day victories to the long-term victory.
Maybe you get a really cute new workout outfit.
Exactly.
I know a lot of women that I go to the gym with are very much motivated by that.
Yeah.
And they'll set small goals for themselves and say, okay, if I go to the gym every day this month, or I at least attempt to move, go on a walk, whatever it is, I'll go and I'll buy that new pair of leggings that I've had my eye on.
Wow.
Because I've worked for them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good one. A lot of my clients are like that as well. I can even say for me, I enjoy doing that. So when I exercise clothes help me to want to keep on exercising. So I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to get a new pair of joggers, or I'll get a new pair of like a new Nike shirt or something like that. And then that's like my motivation. I can't wait to wear this to exercise or something like that. There's just that external attachment, right? Look good, feel good.
Dress for success.
Exactly. So then once you get that, then you start to make personal note and you say, okay, what do I see in myself as I'm doing this? Am I enjoying myself? And that's okay to say you're not, and then to say, I'm going to try something else. But to stay in the activity, you make those notes and you see, okay, out of what I've maybe dipped my hand in, what makes me feel good? What do I love doing in the moment of that thing? It doesn't equal it's going to be an easy road all the way through, but it is important to start with something that catches your interest or something that you enjoy.
Change is hard.
And then from there, you jump into this environmental change. Okay, so I found what I enjoy. Now what can I do to fuel that why? And like we said, people and community, diet, making sure that I eat to fuel my activity or my exercise. If you're a runner, you want to make sure that your diet is optimal. Even if you're in a swim class, or if you're in Zumba, you want your diet to be optimal so you can put out the best moves in that Zumba class for yourself, or swim your best lap that you have yet to maybe want to achieve, But then there's that extra element that could be a fourth part, and that's pass it on,
Yes.
So part of once we come to the aspect of knowing better, then we do better. Once we do better, then we become better. And once we do that, then our why shows and people gravitate to that why. And then we can motivate them to find their why or to make their next step. I know personally for me, when I was in college exercising, I'd mind my business, but I love exercise. So I would talk to people here and there. I wasn't the guy that would go and say, hey, you're doing that wrong. You know what I mean? It was just...
No one likes that guy.
No one likes that guy. Don't be that guy. But I would do my own exercises, and I would maybe do something a little bit intricate or fancy, but people would come and start asking like, hey, so what about this or whatever? Next thing you know, it's like, and if you know me, I like to work out for only like 45 minutes. I'm working out for 2 hours because I have 4 people working out with me. But I found joy in it. I didn't find any like, oh, you're taking away my why. I felt gratification from not just I'm in my element, I'm doing what I like to do because that's my why, but now I'm helping these people find their why and find joy in doing it. Not just come into maybe a gym and look around like, oh, what do I do next? But it's like, wow, they can, and then they can pass it on to other people. And that's the ripple effect of the why, you know?
Absolutely.
So the why starts inward, but it works outward, and it helps to build relationships. It helps to build overall holistic health. We grow physically, mentally, spiritually. All of these types of things play into that factor, you know?
I think it's great to realize as well that your why might not be the same, and it probably really is not the same as others. And you might also not be everyone's flavor, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe you have a friend, you're really into Zumba and they're not into Zumba, and that's okay. So we also don't want to force that down their throat. You do want those things that you're excited about to show. But anytime that you make a change in your life, maybe you have people who just don't understand it, or it's just not their cup of tea, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to try. But like you said, it is good to surround yourself with those people who are like-minded. Making a diet change can be really hard. If someone in your family doesn't understand it, you know, you're starting to make changes to the things that you're cooking, the things that you buy, that you have in your pantry. That can be really tough for others to swallow if they're not on the same journey as you. But it doesn't mean you should quit. If you're really enjoying it and you like those changes, you like how you're feeling, stick with it and continue to surround yourself with those people who will show up and who will agree and who are the same flavor as you.
Exactly. That just reminds me of our story in the very beginning with our guy, Dashrath Manji. Not everybody was on board with a hammer and chisel going into a wall for miles and miles. He had a small group of people that helped him. Some people were like, that's not my why. I'm not with it. But his determination, his rooting in his why kept him going. And probably it started off as him alone. Another person's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Found curiosity. And next thing you know, you have enough people that are inspired to carry on. And that's exactly what you're speaking about there. You know, let your light shine for other people, because your why, that intrinsic factor, will you can't contain it. It's not that you go around like, hey, let me talk to you about this. It just shows, it radiates off of you. When
you're your best, it is very, very visible, and it makes other people also want to be their best.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dani, I think we have to quit. This was fun.
This was very, very nice. I like talking about being our best.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
Yeah, and that's the point, is we're here to know better so that we can just become better, you know? So until next time, folks, I'm Daron Raynor.
I'm Dani Ondreka.
And this is Know Better, Be Better podcast. We'll see you next time.